The Extra Point Podcast from Arizona's family.
All right, where will the Arizona Coyotes be come this time next year, the years ahead? Will it still be in Arizona? Will it be in different parts of the valley? What are they saying about it nationally? Well, let's talk to the man who's the most plugged in and has just been on top of every story here in Arizona since the day I got here. The one, the only, Craig Morgan zooms in from, your home? Are you in the Canadian Rockies? Where are you today?
I think you should add that in later in post-production because as I told you off air, I got the fourth choice in the house. I rank below my wife and both of my kids, so I've been banished to the bedroom. Sorry about the backdrop here.
Well, is school out for the summer? Is that the deal? Because I'm in the same deal. I've lost control of the house.
Yeah, that's the size of it right there, buddy. But it is good to see you, and it beats the heck out of waiting for a high school athlete to show up together, doesn't it?
Oh my gosh. I mean, that was okay. Let's just reset the story for everybody. We're at Devontae Neal's news conference in 2012. You and I are going live back then on FoxSportsArizona.com. I think we could probably still be going live because I guess he did show up later on in the day. Where's that rank on the Bizarro meter when it comes to some of the stories that you've been able to dig up regarding our Arizona hockey team?
Well, I mean, yeah, the Devontae Neal thing was bizarre, but when you cover the Coyotes for a living, it probably ranks pretty low on the list because there's more drama around every corner. And as we saw last week with the Tempe vote, there's even more ahead for the Coyotes.
Well, and I feel like the drama can be good for business. I feel like more people are talking about the Coyotes than maybe talked about them during the year. And they're a fun team to watch this year. And you're kind of like, what are you guys doing? Lose. Exactly. Why are you winning? But I mean, an exciting, fun team. So as you assess the current state of the Coyotes, do you think this team is long for Arizona? I certainly do not feel that way. Just sort of putting my finger to the wind here.
Well, I got to tell you, I was at the event on election night, and it was supposed to be a victorious party. In fact, I was told by multiple sources that polling showed them with as large as a 10-point lead in the polls. The polling was a bit off, so maybe don't go with that firm again. It didn't go well. It was like a funeral afterward, and when I walked out of there, Mark, I really felt like with all of my history covering this team for the past 23 years, it felt like this was a death blow. And that's, for guys like us, it's part of your career too, right? I put in a lot of time covering this team, and I really thought it was coming to an end. But then, as often happens with the Coyotes, I woke up the next day, made a few calls, and found not ready to pull the plug yet. Javier Gutierrez, the president and CEO, confirmed to me the team is not for sale, and I got confirmation that that they are not going to force a sale yet. They are going to allow them to explore more options. Having said that, Mark, I don't think they're on much time here. I think they have to have a solution in place by the start of the regular season, or we could see the wheels spinning on an alternative.
Oh man, that's I mean, you kind of feel it. It's tough to hear, but as we talk about those options, first of all, I love the fact that we are one of 13 big league cities with pro hockey, pro basketball, pro baseball, pro football, and just all the other. I mean, we're getting a women's soccer team to go with the Rising, NBA, WNBA, NASCAR, major golf tournament. Well, not a major, but you know what I mean. It's the People's Open. But as far as just, when it comes to just possibilities of where they could go, there's the Mesa site. What are some of the other possibilities that they're exploring?
Well, I wrote a lengthy story on this over the weekend, and quite frankly, I can't say that I know all of the sites that they are considering. I do know that, Fiesta Mall has come up. I have my doubts about that one, Mark. I have to be honest, because Fiesta Mall isn't anything new to the Coyotes. If you know the history of Javier Gutierrez, when he came in, Alex Morello told him, this is priority number 1 through 10 for you. Find an arena. Fiesta Mall was available at that point too, and they didn't really pursue it then. So I have questions about whether it's that serious now. Could they go somewhere else in Mesa? Maybe. You saw how open Mesa Mayor John Giles is to having them. The key here is they have to find a site that doesn't require a public vote. They don't want to go down that road again. So that probably means either a privately owned piece of land that they can purchase, or maybe even, as I suggested in that story, a county island that's also privately owned. Now, the advantage of a county island, of course, is there is no public vote. With privately owned piece of land, it gets a little murkier according to the wording of the Mesa Charter, but Giles seems to think that they can work a deal without a public vote. That would be huge if they could get that in place.
Can you flesh out the idea of a county island a little more? Because when it comes to, and it's the same thing with the Diamondbacks, city, county, it gets a little murky. So what does that look like, the county island?
Well, it's not part of a municipality, so it's not beholden to those sorts of laws. It's only beholden to the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors. And Tom Galvin, who represents District 2, which encompasses pretty much all the land that we're talking about that the Coyotes would consider. He's a Coyotes fan, and he's been very public on Twitter about trying to find a home for this team. He doesn't want to see him leave. So that may be an avenue that they pursue.
And for the folks that they're zooming in here and catching this, so what areas of town does that entail?
You're talking about Scottsdale, Tempe, Mesa, the reservation, the reservation to the east of Scottsdale. I always fumble on that name because it's such a long name, but it's the Maricopa. Yeah. The Salt River, Maricopa, Pima community. That is land that has been looked at in the past. And I think they'll look there again, but there are a lot of complications there in terms of gaming rights. You can't own land there. You can't build residences there. So those were big pieces of Alex Morello's revenue projection. So when you take all of those pieces out, it makes it very difficult to look at the reservation.
So were you here back in the late 90s? I think this is the only question I've never asked you. Were you here for the whiteouts and when downtown Phoenix was rocking? And would you say it was a Coyotes town at one point even?
Yeah, when they first got here and played at America West Arena, they drew really well. It was a hot ticket. They really were an exciting team to watch. Of course, they never got over the first round hump of the playoffs, but they were in the playoffs a lot. And they had exciting teams with Keith Tkachuk, Jeremy Roenick. I could go on and on with the names. They succeeded downtown. They were drawing, 15,000 plus those first few seasons. But as former owner Richard Burke told me in a story that I also wrote recently, it got to the point where NHL payrolls got too high to survive as a tenant in somebody else's building. After year 3, that's when they crossed that threshold where they realized it wasn't going to work revenue-wise anymore. If you look around the NHL, there is not a single team, despite all the shared arenas between NBA and NHL teams, there is not a single NHL team that's a tenant in somebody else's building. Either the NHL team owns the building or the same owner owns both those teams. Why? Because the NHL, more than any other league, gets its revenue from the arena, naming rights, parking rights, all the associated revenues. They don't have the massive TV or radio deals that some of these other leagues do, so they have to count on that in order to make things work.
Well, and you look at the 3 arenas that I guess are currently up around town. You look at downtown, so that likely wouldn't work because the Suns manage that arena. It's owned by the city. Is that correct?
Yeah, the only fascinating part of that, and I got to shout out my colleague at PHNX, Gerald Bourget. I asked him to reach out to the Suns for comment, and we did get a statement back from the Suns saying that if the NHL were to have wanted to have a conversation with the Suns about purchasing the Coyotes, if they became available for sale, they would have that conversation. So that was in my story as well. As we know right now, as I told you earlier, they're not for sale. The league and the team have both made that very clear. But I have to wonder, Mark, you get 4 months down the road, we get to September, the Coyotes still don't have a solid plan in place. Doesn't Gary Bettman have to make that call at that point to Matt Ishbia?
Yeah, I think so. I remember doing stories when they redid the arena where they said they couldn't retrofit it for hockey because it would be another couple $100 million. So wouldn't you run into the same issue where one of the goals has obstructed view seating?
Yeah, you would have to retrofit it. And my understanding is that when they did the most recent renovations, they went even deeper into the lower bowl. So it's even more complicated. But you've got those offices behind the north end. I've been told by people that you can do it. It is, like you said, it's around $200 million to do, and I don't know what the time frame is. That creates another complication because if it displaces the Suns, that would seem like a non-starter. But can they get it done in 5 months? I don't know. I think there is maybe some willingness to at least explore that, though, and that to me is very intriguing because it brings them full circle back to where they started. Right,
which is where we've been now for about, it feels like 16 years. That's why I just feel like this is never going to happen. It's like you're the person who says they're going to keep calling you back and they never call you back. The deal that never gets done. What do you think is going to take to get this thing done? And I mean, just to go as broad as possible here.
Well, people have asked me about the timeline, and I do think that they're under the gun here. That's why I said I think they need something in place by the start of the season. Look, Gary Bettman has bent over backwards to keep this a hockey market. And like, if Coyotes fans are looking for somebody as a savior, outside of Shane Doan, that's your guy. Gary Bettman has done everything possible to keep this team in this market. But when I look at their situation, they're contracted to play 2 more years plus an option season at Mullet Arena at ASU. The league has already said they're going to be there next year, so we know that. But they have 3 more years on the contract. To me, you have to be able to execute whatever plan it is in that time frame, because I don't think the NHL Board of Governors is going to have the patience with the Coyotes anymore. Quite frankly, most everyone is fed up with this situation. The Board of Governors are not happy with how much of a drain the Coyotes are on revenue. The NHLPA clearly is not happy because it's impacting their own players, not only with salaries, but in terms of playing conditions, if you saw some of my tweets from earlier today. And listen, I think the PA has less pull. I think there's less that they can do, but the Board of Governors absolutely has pull. So I think they need to execute a plan, both get it in place by September and be able to execute it in that same time frame that they were originally on when they moved into Mullet Arena.
Yeah, as we're looking at your tweets from earlier today, and yeah, you are seeing the NHLPA complaint. So there isn't that mullet magic. I mean, we heard from so many people that it takes you back, but was that just more people playing nice and just saying it's different?
I actually don't think the players had a problem playing in the arena. Obviously, they want to play in an NHL arena. Every player wants to play in an NHL arena. It was more like little things that I've heard that were complaints. I mentioned one, like the flight from Edmonton to Denver when they played the NHL had them scheduled for a late start in Edmonton. They go to overtime. And if you know the logistics of the NHL, the Edmonton and Denver airports are probably the farthest from the arenas in downtown of any 2 in the league. So the players wanted to stay over in Edmonton, and they were told it was not cost effective. So they end up flying late after a late start and overtime. They have to go through customs in Denver and then drive from what feels like Kansas to get into downtown Denver. And they got to the airport at like 5 a.m. So that was not a good look. And there are examples like that. But I want to make very clear, because there was a report from Larry Brooks of the New York Post that they had violated the collective bargaining agreement. The NHLPA says that's just flat out not true. There were 0 violations of the CBA. Were there complaints, and were there probably more than normally come from a team? And there are complaints from around the league every year. Coyotes probably had more because of this crazy situation they were in. But the NHLPA told me flat out there were no CBA violations.
Okay, so appreciate you clearing that up. Let's clear up the other arenas here in town. Just go through them real quick if it makes sense. Veterans Memorial Coliseum. Is that, I mean, there's a lot of room. I mean, I don't know if good bones is a good way to put it, but it's there. I mean, it's centrally located. Could that side work?
We did a story. We actually took the entire PHNX crew over there when they parted ways with Glendale. I'll put it that way. There's a lot of structural issues with there. There's no luxury suites. There's issues with the foundation, the ice plant, et cetera. There's a lot of issues. The Coyotes looked at it actually as a potential temporary home, and they just thought, given the age and the issues there, it would just cost too much. To me, if they're going to go to that site, you're probably taking a wrecking ball and starting from scratch.
Which, wouldn't be the worst thing. I mean, it kind of seems like it needs that. We did the state basketball over there. It was kind of fun. It was kind of nostalgic, but it was also very old. And, I mean, it's got a good parking lot. It's in between a couple freeways and could maybe help gentrify the area. That's a risk. Partnering up with the Diamondbacks. That would seem to make sense if the Diamondbacks were to want to leave downtown. Could you see a scenario where the two of those get into business together?
Yeah, and that's where the tribe comes in, actually, reservation land. I've heard that idea floated, actually. It's no secret that they're courting the Diamondbacks. Could we see a complex? Maybe. Again, I don't know how the revenue works, if it would make sense for Alex Morello to step into that situation. I don't know if he could make it work, but I think it will at least be explored on both sides.
Could they buy the land outright in Mesa? I mean, Dennis Welsh said he thought it would probably have to go to a vote there. But you think there's any scenario where the city says, we're not using this, why don't you guys just buy it and we're good?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what John Giles is alluding to. Again, the devil's in the details of the contract. I don't know what could be challenged. I can't go down that road because I just don't know what the details would look like, whether there would be grounds to challenge it, whether it's the municipality or, God forbid, we get the Goldwater Institute involved again. And that's why I mentioned the County Island idea, because in that situation, There's no public vote. There's absolutely no public vote. The issue with County Islands is the Coyotes need tax abatements. It was clear that that was a part of their deal, and it's really complicated to get tax abatements on a county island.
Well, and also downtown Mesa, I've thought for a long time with all the infrastructure down there and with the light rail going down there, that kind of seems dark horse-ish. You think there's room in downtown Mesa to put up a hockey arena? And I know we're just speculating here, but you are the expert, and I know you've just looked at I don't know if you're out surveying lands or not.
I got to admit, like after I started going down this road of county islands and privately owned lands and opportunity zones, by the way, you might want to look that one up. I don't want to talk about it on the show. I started looking at where all these places might be. And then I was like, this is insane. There are far too many of them. You don't know who owns the land in a lot of the cases. So I can't go down this road. But for downtown Mesa, I will say this. I worked at the East Valley Tribune and we were headquartered in downtown Mesa. It's changed quite a bit. That would be a pretty cool feather in Mesa's cap to have the arena somewhere near downtown.
That would be awesome. And thanks for coming on my political podcast, by the way. Next thing, I'll have you up on my real estate podcast. One other crazy one here, and I just want to get your reaction. Any chance the Coyotes patch things up with Glendale?
No. How's that for an easy answer? I just can't see that ever happening again. And listen, Mark, even if they did, even if they could repair that toxic relationship, which goes two ways, I want to make sure everyone understands that it's not all the Coyotes. I was there. I have the receipts. Even if they were to go back to Glendale, you end up with the same issues. You couldn't make it work financially. Again, going back to what Richard Burke said when he sold the team to Steve Ellman rather than going with him to Glendale, it's not going to work out there economically. Richard Burke saw that way back at the turn of the millennium. He knew it wasn't going to work. And as he told me in that story, everything that has followed with the Coyotes has been a product of that decision. The ownership turnover because nobody could afford the losses, the inability to invest in the team because they didn't have the revenue. Everything that followed was a product of going to Glendale.
All right, so the team is being courted openly by Patrick Mahomes for Kansas City. The Hartford mayor had a tweet the other day. What are the big what are the contenders here to come in and steal our hockey team? Who do we need to be? Do we just tell everybody to look out for Patrick Mahomes walking around town trying to wear a hockey jersey?
Here's what I'll say: when you're considering this possibility of relocation, follow the money. So I know a lot of people talk about Houston and they think Tillman Fertitta can just open up his let's call it a satchel and pay for the Coyotes. My understanding is no, he can't actually, and he's not really interested in paying the price for the Coyotes. So if he's not your owner, you're in the same situation where you're a tenant in somebody else's building, and we know the NHL won't do that. To me, Houston makes more sense as an expansion market. You can make $1 billion going to Houston. So why would you give that up? Why would the owners give that up? They like making money. I think the more likely scenario is, Salt Lake City has come on the map recently. There's a willing owner, an arena. That could be a possibility, I suppose. But again, we're just not that far down the road yet. The league isn't ready to force a sale. The Coyotes aren't selling. And again, we talked about the Ishbia option. I'm hoping at least that they would explore that, before leaving the market. As for Hartford, I can pretty confidently tell you, Mark, that one's not happening.
But I love the Whale. First of all, the Whalers' uniforms are great. And then what do they take the ice to? But Brass Bonanza? Remember? Yeah. I mean, maybe the Carolina Hurricanes just adopt that and wear their uniforms. Real quick, though, back because I'm from Houston, I have to. I want to circle back to this. So you think Fertitta is a no? But I would think that if you currently own an NBA team, you could maximize what you're making, bringing another franchise in and having the building full another 50-something nights a year if you make the playoffs. What have you heard anything else about why that doesn't make financial sense in Houston?
I've just heard that he's not willing to pay the price for a team. Now, I have seen this idea floated that he could be a minority owner in the team, and I don't know how much leg that has. But again, I go back to, would you rather have a relocation fee distributed among the owners, or would you rather have $1 billion distributed among the owners? To me, that's pretty obvious. Maybe you find a different situation for the Coyotes if, in fact, it comes to the point where we are ready to relocate them. How many cities have we talked about, by the way, Mark, over the years? It's past half a dozen. It's like 8, 9, maybe 10 cities that have supposedly been getting the Coyotes. It hasn't happened yet.
I know. It's like they're like a cockroach. You can't kill them. And
Seriously.
As much as I enjoy talking sports with you, I really, it was, remember when you were in the Cardinal locker room and Beanie Wells told you about his knee injury and you reported it? That was great, by the way.
That.
Yeah.
I do remember that.
How comfortable was that when you reported that?
Well, the crazy part was that my next conversation was with Ken Wisenhunt, who was the coach at the time, who, I literally had to go up to him and say, did Beanie Wells have microfracture surgery on his knee? And he repeated my question to me. Did Beanie Wells have microfracture surgery on his knee? Yes, he did. So no one was announcing that, but yeah, Beanie showed me the 2 marks below his knee, and it was pretty obvious what had been going on there.
Well, that's good reporting, and you've been all over this story from the beginning. So do you get a summer vacation at all, or are you just waiting for the next shoe to drop here at the Coyotes? What do you think? How do you think this summer plays out? Does everybody take a break, or is this going to be fast and furious till opening night?
Yeah, I do get a vacation in another week, but I don't expect an announcement in the next couple of weeks. I'd be surprised if they were able to move that fast. I know people think they should have had a plan B, but you can't go too far down that path without angering the people who you're involved with for plan A. So you have some ideas, and now you've got to explore them. And I think what I would say is they have the structure of a deal in place already, right? They have a lot of the pieces. You probably have to tweak it depending on the site and the municipality, but I think they have a lot of the pieces. So again, I would think that they have to have something done by September.
Interesting. All right. So do you have anything else in the hopper? Can you give us a little tease and tell us where we can read your stuff and see you on the airwaves on YouTube with PHNX coming up here?
Yeah, it's the PHNX Coyotes podcast. You can find us on YouTube. Of course, the website is gophnx.com. And of course, I'm all over Twitter, Mark, as you know. So you can find my work in any of those places. And I would appreciate it if you actually read it.
And I have the alerts set on my phone as well. So, hey, thanks so much for your time, man. Really appreciate it. And love talking sports with you. The Extra Point Podcast is a production of 3TV, CBS5, and azfamily.com in Phoenix, Arizona.